For the graph number 1 that we did on Monday, May 14th, there were quite a few issues with getting the graphs to work properly. So this is just going to be a troubleshooting video that I shoot here. So let me open up my file and I'll show you some of the issues that students were having and how we can clear those up. To begin with, I asked you to do a heading at the top, which most of you did, and then I also mentioned putting in some of the units underneath it and then putting in all the information underneath that. And so most of you did that. Not all of you, but most of you. Now when we select date and we go sunrise and sunset, this is what I asked you to do yesterday. I told you that I wanted you to put a scatter plot, an XY scatter. And I like those because it puts in the specific information that you have. It doesn't connect the lines, and therefore it doesn't assume that there's information that you didn't actually find. It just puts the actual spots that you did find. The only issue with this is I click on it, okay, it turns out great, I get my sunset. As I said before, if we don't get our sunrise, we can go up to chart, add data, and just select all of our sunrise stuff, and that will add it to our chart. So now that I've selected it, hit OK, and when I scroll up it should be there. Okay, there it is. So sunset and sunrise. Now when we look at our X and Y axes, we have some issues. This is military time running along the side, so that's correct. And at the bottom we have whole numbers. These are supposed to be the dates. So it's supposed to be going from August all the way through May, and it's just giving us whole numbers. So if we try to go down and format that, we can go up to the number, and if I click date, I'll have to unclick linked to source. If I click date and I choose the format of the date that I want, say I choose this, okay, it changes it, but it puts it in 04 for some reason, and it starts at January. So it doesn't actually use the information that I give it in the chart, which is frustrating. I don't know how to change that in the XY scatter. So what we need to do is actually go to a line graph. So if I click on line, there it is. Now when I look at this, I can see my times. Again, if I want to go through, I can change my times because there's 2 hours and 24 minutes in between each line, and that's quite a bit of time in between each interval. So I'm going to go through and just make it a little more close together so that it's a little easier to read. So I click on my scale, and the major unit, instead of being 0.1, is going to be 0.03, and that should do it. And then, like I said before, we can just stretch this a bit and it'll pull those numbers away from each other so they're not so close and not so crammed in. I'm going to move this downwards to the next page. Did it move it? Okay, that didn't work. Maybe I'll just move it down a bit so I can see these top headings. That's my main concern. Okay, and so it did work that time. It's tough to tell with these dates down here, but it is actually using decent dates. However, it gives me time here as well. And the issue with this is when I take a look at what it's actually selected and it's using the date and time there. I don't know why the heck it does that, but it does that. And so what we can do is this. I'll just delete out my graph, and what I want is to insert in between date and time a new column. So I'll select time, click insert column, and that gives me an open space. And what it ends up doing is it selects these two, and it doesn't give us any numbers in this associated with the date, just the date, not anything else. And that's perfect. That's what we want. So now I'll select my date, I'll select my sunrise and my sunset. And when I go up to line, again we're doing line now, not scatter, I'll click on line, and it has my dates down at the bottom from the end of August all the way to the beginning of May. Just has my sunset, not my sunrise, so remember how we fix that? Go up to chart, add data, and when it gives us our range, we just select sunrise and go all the way down through those numbers. Just like so. Okay? So now I'm going to have sunrise and sunset. If I want to go through and change how often it has my dates on here, I can go to my scale and intervals between marks. Put 5. Is that going to help me? There we go. Interval between labels. Okay, I can just decrease that number. Maybe 3. Okay, and that's probably good because I can stretch it out. Okay, now I would go through and I would format my X and Y axes. Or another issue that we're having problems with, I'll have to close this graph to show you what the issue was. Some students did not put in the units underneath the headings, and so I'll just delete it out to make it like some of your weather logs out there. So you had your headings and then right underneath it the information, which seems good, but really when you try to graph your date versus your sunrise and sunset, you get a really mixed up, confusing graph. And the reason is very simple. You just need to insert a row. When you insert a row, you get a space there and it recognizes it as being data that's associated with those points and not actually points. And so it's trying to use those headings as part of your data, which doesn't work. So now I can click date, sunrise, sunset, do my line graph, and it works. Except for the sunrise, and again I just go back and click on my chart, add data, and go through my sunrise. When it's all selected, I click OK, and we're good to go. Sunrise and sunset. Now again guys, remember, format the y-axis, format the x-axis. Make sure you put a label that goes along with both. Make sure you have a legend on it. Make sure you have your title across the top. Make sure you make it your own colors. And keep in mind, when you print these off, it's on a black and white printer. So you're not going to get the beautiful colors that you see on your graph. If you'd like to, you can leave it very light colored, and you can go back through with a marker and you can color up this graph how you'd like to give it some good colors to it. But the fancy stuff that you do on here, it can still look cool, but it's going to be black and white. It's not going to be color. When you are finished with it and you print it down to the library, printer number 14, pick it up, put your name on the back side, and do it in pencil. If you do it in permanent marker, it's just going to soak through to the front, and we don't want that. Good luck.